Copy, I'm in road therapy. 437.
Throughout history, humanity has faced incredible challenges from nature and from its own mistakes. Disasters, whether earthquakes, tsunamis, industrial accidents, or nuclear meltdowns, have left scars that last for generations. In this documentary, we journey across the globe to witness some of the deadliest and most unforgettable catastrophes that changed nations forever. Japan, Great Kanto Earthquake 1923. September 1st, 1923. It was a clear morning in Japan when, without warning, the ground began to tremble beneath the bustling cities of Tokyo and Yokohama. Within moments, the tremors grew into a monstrous force. Streets rippled like waves, wooden homes collapsed into piles of splintered debris, and factories crumbled as if made of sand. The Great Kanto earthquake, with a magnitude of 7.9, struck with unimaginable fury. The devastation was immediate, but the quake was only the beginning. As buildings toppled, fires ignited across the cities. Fueled by strong winds, flames swept uncontrollably through narrow streets, trapping thousands who had no escape. Entire districts were swallowed by the inferno, and thick black smoke turned daylight into darkness. In Yokohama, the bustling harbor was reduced to ruins. Bridges collapsed into the water, ships capsized, and survivors stood helpless on the shoreline, watching as fire consumed everything they knew. Panic spread faster than the flames as people searched desperately for loved ones among the chaos. By the time the earth stilled and the last fire died out, more than 140,000 lives had been lost. The Great Kanto earthquake was not just a natural disaster, it was a national tragedy that reshaped Japan forever. Yet from the ruins came resilience. The cities were rebuilt stronger, streets were widened, and new systems of disaster preparedness were born. Out of unimaginable destruction, Japan found the strength to rise again. USA. Hurricane Katrina 2005. August 29, 2005. The Gulf Coast of the United States braced for impact as Hurricane Katrina, a Category 5 storm, roared out of the Atlantic with winds exceeding 280 kilometers per hour. For days, meteorologists had warned of its destructive power, but nothing could prepare the people of New Orleans for what was about to come. As Katrina made landfall, storm surges as high as 8 meters crashed into the city's defenses. Levees meant to protect New Orleans from flooding began to collapse, unleashing walls of water that swallowed entire neighborhoods. Streets transformed into rivers overnight. Thousands of residents, unable to evacuate, were trapped on rooftops, waving desperately for help. The devastation stretched far beyond the city. Entire coastal communities were flattened, highways torn apart, and power lines brought down. Hospitals overflowed with the injured, while emergency services struggled to respond to the sheer scale of the disaster. By the time the storm subsided, more than 1,800 lives were lost and millions were displaced. Yet the tragedy of Katrina was not only the storm itself, but the failures it exposed. The disaster revealed cracks in America's disaster response system, leaving many stranded for days without food, water, or shelter. The images of desperate families waiting for rescue shocked the world, raising urgent questions about preparedness, inequality, and leadership in times of crisis. In the years since, New Orleans has rebuilt, but the scars remain a reminder of nature's fury and the cost of being unprepared for its wrath. Katrina was not just a hurricane. It was a turning point in America's understanding of vulnerability, resilience, and the urgent need to protect those most at risk. China, Tangshan earthquake 1976. July 28, 1976, at precisely 3:42 a.m., while the city of Tangshan in northern China was still asleep, the ground began to tremble. Within seconds, an earthquake of magnitude 7.61 of the deadliest of the 20th century ripped through the industrial city. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble before anyone even had time to react. Tangshan was home to more than 1 million people, many living in densely packed brick houses. Those structures stood no chance against the violence of the quake. In less than a minute, 85% of the city's buildings were destroyed. Factories, schools, and hospitals collapsed like sandcastles. Families were buried alive in their homes. Survivors described scenes of unimaginable horror streets covered in dust, cries for help echoing from beneath the ruins, fires breaking out across the city. Aftershocks shook the ground repeatedly, causing already weakened buildings to collapse further and crushing rescue efforts. In the chaos, water lines ruptured, food supplies vanished, and the city was plunged into darkness. Official records estimated that around 242,000 people lost their lives, though some accounts suggest the number was even higher. More than 160,000 were severely injured. In a matter of minutes, Tangshan went from a bustling industrial hub to a wasteland of ruins and sorrow. Yet, out of this devastation came stories of extraordinary resilience. Survivors banded together, pulling neighbors from the rubble, sharing food and caring for orphans. China mobilized one of its largest ever rescue operations, though the scale of the disaster meant recovery would take years. The Tangshan earthquake was not just a natural disaster, it was a national trauma. It reshaped China's approach to disaster preparedness and stands today as a solemn reminder of how fragile human life can be when the earth itself turns against us. Japan, 2011 Tōhoku earthquake and tsunami. On March 11, 2011, at 2:46 p.m., the eastern coast of Japan shook with one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. Magnitude 9.1 megathrust quake beneath the Pacific Ocean. Within minutes, the sea began to retreat ominously, and a towering wall of water, some waves reaching over 40 meters, rushed toward the Tōhoku coastline. Entire towns were erased in seconds. Cars, buildings, and even ships were swept inland like toys. The tsunami traveled up rivers, flooded farmland, and destroyed infrastructure that had stood for generations. Nearly 16,000 lives were lost, and thousands more went missing. For the survivors, the world they knew was gone forever. But the disaster didn't end there. At the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, the tsunami knocked out backup generators. With no cooling systems, 3 reactors melted down, releasing radioactive material into the air and sea. It became one of the worst nuclear crises since Chernobyl. The images from that day shocked the world streets swallowed by water, entire neighborhoods burning as floodwaters carried fuel into fires, and survivors standing helpless as their homes disappeared before their eyes. Yet amidst this unimaginable destruction, Japan showed its resilience. Rescue teams worked tirelessly, communities organized shelters, and the world came together to send aid. Even today, the Tōhoku region continues to rebuild, serving as a reminder of both nature's fury and the strength of human perseverance. The 2011 Tōhoku earthquake and tsunami was more than a disaster. It was a turning point that reshaped global conversations about disaster preparedness, nuclear safety, and humanity's fragile relationship with the forces of nature. India, 1984 Bhopal gas disaster. On the night of December 2, 1984, the city of Bhopal in central India became the site of the deadliest industrial disaster in history. At the Union Carbide pesticide plant, a chemical reaction triggered the release of more than 40 tons of methyl isocyanate gas into the air. Within minutes, the invisible poison spread across the sleeping city. People awoke coughing violently, their eyes burning, lungs collapsing under the toxic cloud. Families ran into the streets, only to collapse in the chaos. In the first hours alone, thousands were dead. Over the coming days and weeks, the death toll soared to more than 15,000, with 500,000 others suffering severe injuries. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Doctors had no idea how to treat the exposure, as the company had kept the chemical's exact dangers secret. Survivors described scenes of horror, entire neighborhoods of people unable to breathe, animals lying dead in the streets, and children separated from their parents in the panic. But the tragedy didn't end with that night. The soil and groundwater around the plant remained contaminated, poisoning generations that followed. Even today, survivors suffer from chronic illnesses, birth defects, and environmental damage caused by the disaster. The Bhopal gas tragedy is remembered not only for its unimaginable human cost, but also as a lesson in corporate negligence and the price of ignoring safety standards. It revealed the devastating consequences when profit is placed above human lives. Nearly 4 decades later, Bhopal continues to stand as a haunting reminder. The world's most dangerous disasters are not always natural, but sometimes man-made. Ukraine, 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster. On April 26, 1986, the world witnessed the most catastrophic nuclear accident in human history. At the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in northern Ukraine, during a late-night safety test, reactor No. 4 exploded. The blast ripped through the massive facility, sending a radioactive fireball high into the sky. The explosion released more than 400 times the radiation of the Hiroshima bomb. The night sky above the plant glowed as graphite from the reactor core burned, and first responders, firefighters, and plant workers ran into the flames with no knowledge of the invisible danger. Many would not survive the following days. Nearby, the city of Pripyat, home to over 50,000 people, continued life as normal. Children went to school, families shopped, and no one was told of the lethal radiation filling the air. It took more than 36 hours before the evacuation began. Buses rolled in, and within hours an entire city was abandoned, never to be lived in again. Across Europe, radioactive clouds drifted, contaminating farmland, water, and even reaching as far as Scandinavia. For weeks, the Soviet Union tried to suppress the full scale of the disaster, but the truth could not be hidden. Chernobyl became a symbol of secrecy, denial, and the heavy price of technological failure. Today, the ruins of Reactor No. 4 are sealed under a massive steel sarcophagus. Pripyat remains a ghost city, frozen in time, its Ferris wheel rusting, toys still scattered in classrooms, and silence where life once thrived. The Chernobyl disaster was not just an accident. It was a turning point for the nuclear industry and for global awareness of radiation's deadly power. It showed the world that one mistake could contaminate entire nations and echo for generations to come. Indonesia, 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. On December 26, 2004, a massive undersea earthquake with a magnitude of 9.1 struck off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. The quake triggered a colossal tsunami that raced across the Indian Ocean at speeds exceeding 800 kilometers per hour. In mere minutes, entire coastal villages were wiped off the map. The waves, some reaching over 30 meters high, struck with unstoppable force. Homes, schools, and boats were swept inland, leaving destruction in their wake. More than 230,000 people across 14 countries lost their lives, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. Indonesia bore the brunt of the disaster, with Aceh province almost completely devastated. Families were separated, communities vanished, and rescue efforts struggled against the sheer scale of the destruction. Survivors recount horrifying scenes of people being swept away, cries for help drowned by the relentless roar of the ocean. Countries from around the world rushed aid to the affected regions, sending relief teams, food, and medical supplies. The tsunami also sparked a global conversation about early warning systems, disaster preparedness, and the urgent need for international cooperation in the face of natural catastrophes. Even years later, the memories of that day remain vivid. Villages that once thrived now stand in ruins, and the loss is deeply felt by the survivors. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami is a chilling reminder of nature's unimaginable power and the fragility of human life when faced with the forces of the planet. Pakistan, 2010 flood disaster. In July 2010, Pakistan experienced one of the worst natural disasters in its history. Monsoon rains, heavier than any in decades, caused rivers to overflow and unleashed catastrophic flooding across much of the country. Over 20 million people were affected, with nearly 2,000 lives lost and millions displaced from their homes. Entire villages were submerged, roads and bridges washed away, and crops destroyed, leaving communities without food or clean water. Cities like Karachi and Peshawar faced rising water levels that transformed streets into rivers, stranding families on rooftops and in makeshift shelters. The flooding destroyed schools, hospitals, and entire neighborhoods. Rescue operations struggled to reach the most remote areas, hampered by debris and relentless rainfall. Survivors faced not only the immediate dangers of drowning, but also disease outbreaks due to contaminated water and the lack of sanitation. The 2010 Pakistan floods revealed vulnerabilities in infrastructure, preparedness, and disaster response. Yet amidst the devastation, stories of resilience emerged. Neighbors helped each other escape. Relief workers risked their lives to save stranded families, and international aid poured in to support recovery. Months after the waters receded, Pakistan began the slow process of rebuilding. Thousands of homes were reconstructed, and lessons were learned about early warning systems and disaster management. The 2010 floods serve as a sobering reminder of nature's power and humanity's enduring spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. Haiti, 2010 earthquake. On January 12, 2010, a devastating earthquake with a magnitude of 7.0 struck near the capital city of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. The city, densely populated and poorly constructed, was instantly reduced to rubble. In mere moments, buildings crumbled, homes collapsed, and streets were filled with dust and debris. The human toll was catastrophic. Over 230,000 lives were lost, more than 300,000 people were injured, and nearly 1.5 million were left homeless. Hospitals and emergency facilities were destroyed, leaving survivors without medical care in the crucial hours after the quake. Families were torn apart, children separated from parents, and communities left in shock and despair. With communication lines down and infrastructure devastated, rescue efforts faced enormous challenges. International aid rushed in, but the scale of the disaster overwhelmed even the most organized relief efforts. In the aftermath, makeshift camps sprang up across Port-au-Prince, where displaced families struggled to find food, water, and shelter. Disease outbreaks, including cholera, became a serious concern, compounding the suffering. Despite the immense tragedy, stories of resilience emerged. Survivors dug through rubble to save loved ones, neighbors shared scarce resources, and global solidarity provided hope and support. The 2010 Haiti earthquake remains a stark reminder of nature's destructive power and the vulnerabilities of human societies. It is a testament to the resilience of those who survived, and a call to improve disaster preparedness and infrastructure in earthquake-prone regions around the world. Philippines, Typhoon Haiyan 2013. On November 8, 2013, Typhoon Haiyan, locally known as Yolanda, slammed into the Philippines with winds exceeding 315 kilometers per hour, making it one of the strongest tropical cyclones ever recorded. The city of Tacloban was the hardest hit, with entire neighborhoods obliterated in a matter of minutes. The storm surge, reaching heights of up to 6 meters, swept away homes, schools, and infrastructure. Streets turned into rivers, and cars and boats were carried inland as if they were toys. The sheer force of the wind tore roofs off buildings and uprooted trees, leaving debris strewn across the landscape. Over 6,000 people lost their lives, while millions more were displaced, forced to live in temporary shelters without basic necessities. Survivors recounted scenes of utter devastation, families separated, entire communities washed away, and the relentless wind drowning out cries for help. Emergency services were quickly overwhelmed. The storm destroyed communication lines, making it difficult to coordinate rescue efforts. International aid arrived from all corners of the globe, providing food, water, and medical assistance to the survivors. In the months following Haiyan, rebuilding efforts began, but the scars of the typhoon remained visible. Entire towns had to be reconstructed, and communities had to grapple with the trauma of loss. Typhoon Haiyan serves as a stark reminder of nature's fury and the vulnerability of coastal communities. Yet it also stands as a testament to human resilience. As survivors persevered, communities came together, and the world rallied to help those most affected by one of the deadliest storms in modern history. Italy, 1980 Irpinia earthquake. On November 23, 1980, southern Italy was struck by the Irpinia earthquake, registering a magnitude of 6.9. The epicenter was near the small towns of Campania and Basilicata, but the destruction spread across the region. The quake occurred in the early hours of the morning, catching residents in their homes while they slept. Buildings, many of them old and unreinforced, crumbled like sandcastles. Churches, schools, and residential houses collapsed, burying countless families beneath the rubble. Within minutes, streets were filled with dust and debris, and cries for help echoed through the night. Over 2,900 lives were lost, thousands more injured, and tens of thousands were left homeless. The disaster also triggered landslides in the mountainous terrain, further complicating rescue efforts. Roads were blocked, communication lines down, and entire villages cut off from aid. Emergency crews and volunteers worked tirelessly, digging through the debris to save survivors. Yet the scale of destruction was overwhelming. In some towns, nearly every building was destroyed, leaving nothing but ruins and shattered lives. The Irpinia earthquake exposed the vulnerabilities of Italy's infrastructure and prompted the government to reevaluate building codes and disaster response strategies. Communities came together, supporting one another in the aftermath. But the trauma of that night lingered for decades. The 1980 Irpinia earthquake serves as a somber reminder of nature's unpredictability, the fragility of human constructions, and the resilience of communities in the face of devastation. Even today, the memories of that tragic morning continue to shape disaster preparedness in Italy and beyond. Bangladesh, 1970 Bhola cyclone. On November 12, 1970, the Bhola cyclone struck East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, with unprecedented fury. Winds exceeding 240 kilometers per hour and storm surges over 10 meters devastated the low-lying coastal areas along the Bay of Bengal. Villages were swallowed by the sea, homes destroyed, and crops obliterated. Over 500,000 people lost their lives, making it the deadliest tropical cyclone in recorded history. Millions were displaced, forced to seek refuge on higher ground or in temporary shelters, many with little to no food or clean water. The scale of destruction was so immense that entire communities vanished overnight. Survivors recount the terrifying night when the storm hit. Waters rising with unstoppable speed, houses collapsing, families clinging desperately to anything that could float. Communication lines were severed, leaving rescue teams struggling to coordinate efforts in the most affected regions. The disaster exposed vulnerabilities in infrastructure and disaster preparedness, highlighting the urgent need for early warning systems and effective evacuation plans. International aid eventually reached the survivors, but the recovery process was long and arduous. The Bhola cyclone not only reshaped the geography of coastal Bangladesh, but also had profound political implications. fueling unrest that contributed to the independence movement of Bangladesh 2 years later. Today, the Bhola cyclone serves as a sobering reminder of nature's power, human vulnerability, and the importance of disaster preparedness in mitigating loss of life during extreme weather events. Its legacy continues to inform cyclone warning systems and emergency response strategies worldwide. Türkiye, 1999 Marmara earthquake. On August 17, 1999, at 3:02 a.m., a powerful earthquake of magnitude 7.4 struck the Marmara region of northwestern Turkey. The epicenter was near the town of Gorkha, and the quake devastated the nearby cities, including Istanbul and Kocaeli. In a matter of seconds, thousands of buildings collapsed, trapping residents under rubble. Families were torn apart as homes crumbled, leaving streets filled with dust, debris, and cries for help. Over 17,000 people lost their lives, and tens of thousands were injured. Hundreds of thousands were left homeless, facing the night without shelter. Rescue efforts began immediately, but the scale of the disaster was overwhelming. Emergency teams worked tirelessly to locate survivors, often digging by hand through rubble. International aid arrived, providing medical assistance, tents, and supplies for the displaced. The Marmara earthquake exposed serious shortcomings in building codes and urban planning, highlighting the vulnerability of rapidly growing cities in earthquake-prone regions. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed, leaving a lasting impact on the region's infrastructure and economy. Amidst the devastation, stories of heroism and resilience emerged. Neighbors saved each other from collapsed buildings, volunteer rescue teams worked around the clock, and communities banded together to support the displaced. The 1999 Marmara earthquake serves as a stark reminder of nature's destructive power, the importance of preparedness, and the resilience of the human spirit. Decades later, its lessons continue to shape Turkey's disaster management strategies and urban planning policies, ensuring that future generations are better protected against such calamities. USA, 1906 San Francisco earthquake. On April 18, 1906, at 5:12 a.m., San Francisco was shaken by a massive earthquake measuring approximately 7.9 in magnitude. The city, known for its dense population and wooden buildings, was instantly thrown into chaos as streets cracked and buildings collapsed. The quake lasted less than a minute, but the destruction was immense. Fires broke out across the city, fueled by broken gas lines, and raged uncontrollably for 3 days. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash and rubble. More than 3,000 people lost their lives, and over half of San Francisco's population was left homeless. The disaster highlighted the city's vulnerability to both natural and man-made consequences. Emergency response was hampered by collapsed infrastructure and lack of coordination, leaving survivors to fend for themselves amidst the flames and chaos. Eyewitnesses recounted harrowing scenes, families escaping burning buildings, streets filled with debris and smoke, and people wandering aimlessly seeking safety. The scale of devastation and the emotional toll on survivors left an indelible mark on the city's history. Following the earthquake, San Francisco underwent a massive rebuilding effort. Modern building codes were implemented, and urban planning was revised to prevent future disasters from causing similar destruction. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake remains one of the most significant natural disasters in American history. It serves as a sobering reminder of the destructive power of earthquakes and the importance of preparedness, resilience, and learning from the past to safeguard communities in seismic zones. Nepal, 2015 Gorkha earthquake. On April 25, 2015, Nepal was struck by a devastating earthquake with a magnitude of 7.8, centered in the Gorkha district. The tremor was felt across the country, including the capital, Kathmandu, and extended into neighboring India, China, and Bangladesh. The earthquake caused widespread destruction. Historic buildings crumbled, homes collapsed, and entire villages were flattened. The loss of life was immense, with over 8,000 people killed and tens of thousands injured. Thousands more were left homeless, struggling to survive in temporary shelters amidst aftershocks and harsh conditions. Kathmandu's cultural heritage suffered heavily, with centuries-old temples and monuments reduced to rubble. The earthquake also triggered landslides in mountainous areas, isolating communities and complicating rescue efforts. Emergency services and international aid teams worked tirelessly, but reaching remote villages proved extremely difficult. Survivors recounted the terrifying moments when buildings collapsed, streets cracked, and mountainsides gave way. Families were separated, and children were orphaned in the chaos. The disaster revealed vulnerabilities in Nepal's infrastructure and disaster preparedness. In the aftermath, the global community rallied to provide aid, and Nepal began an extensive reconstruction effort, focusing on earthquake-resistant construction and improved early warning systems. The 2015 Gorkha earthquake remains a powerful reminder of nature's unpredictability, the fragility of human settlements in seismic zones, and the resilience of communities who rebuild amidst devastation. It also emphasizes the importance of preparedness, international cooperation, and learning from past tragedies to reduce future risks. Australia, 2019 to 2020 bushfires. During the summer of 2019-2020, Australia faced one of the most catastrophic bushfire seasons in its history. Sparked by extreme heat, drought, and lightning strikes, fires raged across New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and South Australia. Millions of hectares of land were consumed by flames, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Entire towns were evacuated as fires moved with unprecedented speed, destroying homes, infrastructure, and livelihoods. Over 3,500 buildings were lost, and the death toll exceeded 30 people. The fires also claimed the lives of an estimated 1 billion animals, causing a massive ecological crisis. Smoke blanketed cities and towns, turning skies orange and causing severe air quality issues. Firefighters worked tirelessly, often risking their lives to contain the blazes and protect communities. International aid and volunteer support arrived, but the sheer scale of the disaster made containment extremely difficult. In the aftermath, communities faced the immense challenge of rebuilding homes, restoring wildlife habitats, and recovering from emotional trauma. The fires highlighted the growing impact of climate change on extreme weather events, forcing Australia and the world to confront the urgent need for sustainable environmental policies. The 2019 to 2020 bushfires serve as a stark reminder of nature's power. human vulnerability, and the resilience of communities in the face of environmental catastrophe. It underscores the importance of preparedness, cooperation, and environmental stewardship to prevent future disasters of similar magnitude. Turkey, 2023 Kahramanmaraş earthquakes. On the morning of February 6, 2023, one of the deadliest disasters in Turkey's history struck. Earthquakes measuring 7.7 and 7.6 in magnitude hit the Pazarcık and Elbistan districts of Kahramanmaraş, directly affecting 10 provinces and impacting over 13 million people. The earthquakes, accompanied by more than 45,000 aftershocks, claimed over 53,500 lives and injured more than 115,000 individuals. Over 518,000 homes and 128,778 buildings were either destroyed or severely damaged, shaking the infrastructure and social fabric of the nation. Thousands of lives were rescued from the rubble through the tireless efforts of national and international aid teams. However, over 2 million people faced housing crises, and more than 5 million were displaced to other regions. The economic toll was immense. Damage to industrial facilities amounted to approximately 155 billion Turkish lira, heavily impacting the nation's industrial production in the affected regions. This disaster has prompted Turkey to re-evaluate its preparedness and resilience against natural hazards. It highlighted the urgent need for stricter building safety regulations, enhanced early warning systems, and comprehensive disaster management reforms. The 2023 Kahramanmaraş earthquakes are not only a tragic natural disaster, but also a testament to the solidarity, resilience, and determination of communities striving to rebuild. They stand as a reminder of the vulnerability of human societies to natural forces and the enduring human spirit in the face of overwhelming devastation. The disasters we have recalled in this video are not just numbers or dates in history. They are the stories of lives cut short, families in grief, and communities struggling to rise again through solidarity. We honor and remember with respect and love all those who lost their lives. Their memory reminds us of the fragility of humanity, but also of the strength we find in unity. May the lessons of the past guide us toward building a safer, more conscious, and more hopeful future.